Okay, we're coming up on the Mon Mapper 2 probe launch. There are currently two mapping probes in orbit. One is around Kerbal, and the other one is around the Mon. The new probe will be launched to the Mon, but will be put into a lower orbit, possibly around 210 kilometers above the surface. The other one is at 49 to 50. The autopilot is now engaged. We are now just awaiting liftoff of the rocket. The target altitude for orbiting Kerbal will be 150 kilometers. And we are launching in T-minus 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. The engines roar to life and liftoff of the Mon Mapper 2. Rocket today will begin its gravity turn at 10 kilometers. As you can see, the throttle is automatically being adjusted. The rocket is autonomously being controlled by MechJeb, as you can see, by the MechJeb 2.0.8 MechJeb computer system. Prevent overheats, limit to terminal velocity, limit acceleration to, corrective steering and auto stage and auto warp on this MechJeb for this rocket, coming up on 30 seconds after liftoff on my mark. 30 seconds into the flight. All engines are performing well. The rocket is performing normally as expected. Current altitude of the rocket is 3.8 kilometers, and we are coming up on burnout of the SRBs, the solid rocket boosters. And there's burnout of the SRBs. And separation, we have a good clean separation on all 8 SRBs. The rocket is now being propelled by the 4 engines on the bottom. The rocket's altitude is 5.7 kilometers, and we are coming up on 1 minute into the flight on my mark. The rocket's speed is 160 meters per second. Mark 1 minute into flight. We are now 1 minute into the flight of the Mon Mapper 2 probe aboard the Mark 1 rocket. Rocket's altitude is now 9 kilometers. We have a normal amount of fuel as we expected, and the gravity turn will begin shortly. And mark 10 kilometers, the rocket is now beginning its gravity turn. Again, the rocket is being controlled autonomously from the onboard computer, MechJeb 2.0.8. The rocket is now gaining speed and is going nearly 300 meters per second, and the orbit altitude again is 150 kilometers, and that is the target orbit altitude. The current apoapsis of this rocket is 20 kilometers and climbing. We are about 50% fuel on the first stage, and this rocket will have just enough fuel to get us into orbit, and that will be the first stage. And once we are safely at an orbit of 150 kilometers, we will jettison the first stage, and we will move on to the second stage, perform about 1 orbit, then make the Mon transfer burn from the second stage. Then once in lunar orbit, we will adjust our orbits to get into as good as a polar orbit as we can, bring the orbit down to about 5 to 10 kilometers, release the probe, and then we will smash the second stage into the surface. And we are just over 2 minutes into the flight now. The rocket's altitude is 33 kilometers. It has just entered the almost thinnest part of the atmosphere now, so it is almost in space. You can see the stars now in the full atmosphere. And the rocket is going 1.5 kilometers per second almost. And the current apoapsis of the vehicle is 79 kilometers and climbing. And the rocket is still on its gravity turn. And there is engine cutoff. Again, we will have just enough fuel to get into an orbit around Kerbal, and then we will jettison this first stage. We'll have the maneuver node up shortly, and then the rocket will begin to turn toward the maneuver node. Okay, we have the maneuver node, and the rocket is now turning toward the maneuver node, and we will burn in about 4.5 minutes. You can see the moon in the background there, right around here in the background. Cool little picture. And the rocket is now on the maneuver node, and we should have panel deployment in a few seconds. And we have confirmation that the solar panel is deploying. This is the probe solar panel, and that will power the whole rocket. And we are burning now. We have commenced the circularization burn. The RCS is also keeping the rocket steady at this time. We're coming up to the end of the circularization burn. As you can see, we barely have any fuel left. We're basically running on fumes, and this is expected. The rocket is performing nominally almost 8 minutes into the flight. And there's engine cutoff. We should have separation in a few seconds. And there's separation. We have a good, clean separation. And the RCS is firing up for a couple seconds to bring the second stage a little bit safe distance from the rocket. So the Mud Mapper is now in orbit, and we will complete almost one full orbit before we do our Mud transfer burn. And again, that will take us to the moon, and we will then circularize our orbit around the moon. As of this time, the Mud Mapper 2 is safely in a orbit around Kerbal.